I hate to have to cut it off, but we're going to go on. And we're going to move now into our keynote presentations. And we'd like to begin by showing you a brief video. It's the trailer to a film called The Scientist's Warning, a documentary about an OSU professor who started a movement to encourage scientists to help turn scientific knowledge into action.
You know, you see all this water around you, but you can't drink it.
Nothing, no green, muted landscape. It's absolutely horrific.
36 fires burning in Oregon, all of them barely contained at this hour. Dozens of people are missing.
For Jeremy and his willingness to be brave.
A climate study endorsed by 11,000 scientists
from more than 150 countries
have banded together to warn of untold human suffering if climate change is not addressed.
I just want to shake humanity and say, okay, do something. The scientific data are in.
We are now the cause of a mass extinction that now threatens us. We're the highest predator on the food chain.
I believe that scientists have an obligation to find out what is true based on the very best research and put it in the hands of people who can put it to work.
Every one of us has a responsibility towards those who are suffering because of our emissions.
What do we need to do? I'll see you in the streets. Thank you.
So if you would like to see the whole film, you can go to this website, scientistwarningfilm.org. And now I would like to introduce you to our Climate Action Dream Team. And while I'm making these introductions, if our 4 speakers could come up to the stage, please. These are 4 individuals who I call our Climate Action Dream Team. We invited them to speak tonight about 4 different responses to the climate emergency. We'll begin with Dr. Bill Ripple, who is Distinguished Professor of Ecology at Oregon State University. In addition to doing groundbreaking work on the gray wolf as a keystone species, Bill has become an outspoken climate leader and climate activist. He was the lead author on the Global Scientist's Warning to Humanity and is director of the Alliance of World Scientists. Bill will speak briefly about the climate emergency from a scientific perspective. Our second speaker is Kathleen Dean Moore, a philosopher and writer, also an OSU Distinguished Professor. She is best known for her books and articles that focus on the cultural and spiritual values of the natural world. In more recent years, Kathleen has written extensively about the moral urgency of climate action in books such as Moral Ground and Great Tide Rising. She will speak briefly about why taking action on climate is a moral imperative. Our third speaker, Chris Quaka, is a former federal disaster coordinator for the Corporation for National and Community Service. In that capacity, he coordinated the federal disaster relief efforts of local, state, and federal government leaders in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas following disasters such as Hurricanes Katrina, Rita, and Ike. Chris will provide a snapshot of what he learned from that experience and how we can improve the resilience of local communities together. Our fourth speaker is Julie Williams, who taught at Corvallis High School for more than 30 years. Her concern about the climate crisis led her to create a CHS course titled Sustainability and Society. As a result of that course, Julie founded Seeds for the Soul, a local nonprofit that has helped many low and middle income residents pay the upfront costs of installing solar and other energy efficiency measures. She will provide an overview of the climate action opportunities open to all of us. Now, please give a warm welcome to the first member of our Climate Action Dream Team, Dr. Bill Ripple.
Thank you, Annette. It's great to be here tonight and see such a great crowd. Okay, I'm going to show you a few slides and speak about the climate emergency that I've been involved with. I want to acknowledge my co-authors, Dr. Chris Wolf and Jillian Gregg. And as many of you know, I've spent years researching the ecological effects of wolves in Yellowstone National Park. Here's an example of our research. On the left, you can see Yellowstone before wolves in '91, and on the right, after wolves in 2017. So the predator affects the prey, affects the plant, and indirectly the predator affects the plants. So the wolves affect the cottonwood trees here, and the elk are in between. So in 1971, I was feeling concerned about the global environment. I knew that I needed to change. Seeing global environmental crisis was the turning point. I wanted to change to be a science and conservation advocate. Here you can see the Muir Glacier in 1941, again in 2004. So quite a recession of the Muir Glacier. David Attenborough says, if we don't take action, the collapse of our civilization and extinction of much of the natural world is on the horizon. This is a map made by National Geographic of eastern United States. It shows what the coastline would look like if all the ice in the world melted. And as I said before, I'm sorry to say, Mar-a-Lago would be underwater. Okay, more seriously, in 2017, we published the World Scientist Warning to Humanity. I invited scientists to sign the paper, so I sent it out to 40 other scientists, and within 2 days, 1,200 scientists signed it. And by the time we published, there were 15,000 scientists from 184 countries that were signatories on this paper. And there were 200 scientists from Corvallis, and I bet there's a few of them in the room tonight. That was huge support from the OSU and other scientists around the community. So that's when we formed the Alliance of World Scientists, which is an international voice. We now have 26,000 scientists, and we work regarding the climate crisis to turn knowledge into action. Then came 2018. Do you remember the Camp Fire in California? It was the deadliest fire ever to hit the state. That's the town of Paradise in the foreground there, burning. This picture changed me. I saw this right during those fires in 2018. I knew I needed to do more for the climate change and climate emergency. People were trying to get out of Paradise and were stuck in a traffic jam, and some of them perished. So then we published another warning in 2019 on the climate emergency. Now this time we got 11,000 signatures from 153 countries, and we talked about there would be untold human suffering if there was no action on climate. We declared that planet Earth is in a climate emergency. Then 3 weeks ago, we published a paper on climate feedback loops. It's titled, "Many Risky Feedback Loops Amplify the Need for Climate Action." We described 27 loops, and you can think of these as climate accelerators going beyond what humans do. So this is nature's response. So let's look at a climate feedback loop. First, the Earth's temperature rises, and then that causes more sea ice to melt. That changes the reflectance, causing more temperature increases and more sea ice to melt, and so on. So we looked at many different feedback loops. Here's an example of 4 interacting: wildfire, permafrost, soil carbon, and sea ice. You see, everything in nature is connected. If humans disturb one thing, there will be a ripple effect. So we can look at some pictures of feedback. There's snow cover albedo, that's reflectance, sea ice albedo, permafrost thawing, peatland smoldering, wildfires burning, cloud properties changing, deserts expanding, forest dieback, insect outbreaks. So something closely related to feedback loops are tipping points, climate tipping points. Look at we have, in this example, we have a blue ball that turns into a red ball when it goes over the tipping point. So that's what we're really worried about with climate change. To go over that ledge is dangerous. And we're currently close to tipping points for Greenland ice sheet collapse, West Antarctic ice sheet collapse, coral reef die-off, abrupt thaw of northern permafrost. So let me put climate change in a long-term perspective. We can take a look at fossil fuel CO2 emissions over the last 1,000 years. And obviously, they were zero for a long, long time until a thing called the Industrial Revolution came along and we started burning coal. And then look what happened. So that's where we are today. So the problem is we need to drop these emissions dramatically and fast. We need to not only go back down to zero, but we need to have negative emissions if we're going to control this climate disaster. Let me put it in context another way. So far, there have been about 1.7 trillion tons of CO2 emissions. About half of all those emissions are still in the atmosphere. They hang around a long, long time. Did you ever see those national debt counters spinning? So this is a kind of like a world climate debt counter, spinning and spinning at the rate of about 1,000 tons of CO2 emitted every second. So just try to wrap your head around that counter and see how fast 1,000 goes on the counter. So this is something we produced and it's on our website. And what we really need is to slow that spinning and eventually stop the spinning. And if possible, reverse it. We need to do that to cool the planet. So, let me conclude tonight saying that about 100 billion people have lived and died over the history of humans on Earth. Potentially trillions, that's with a T, of humans will someday exist. Their fate depends on the choices we make today. We have an enormous opportunity to make such an immense difference for life on planet Earth. Thank you.
Hey, Brandon, would you turn the lights back on? I want to be able to see Corvallis, so I should probably put my glasses on. Thank you, Bill. Thank you all, but particularly thank you, Bill, and bless the scientists. Even though, yeah. Even though big oil has spent $3.6 billion, that's with a B, dollars to spread confusion and lies, scientists, I think we can say, has generally won the 3 decades-long battle of the facts. Because now, 72%, 3 out of every 4 Americans believe that climate change is real, it is dangerous, and it has begun. So, 3 cheers. Well, maybe 1 cheer. Maybe 1 cheer, because here's the thing. Of all of those people who are concerned about climate catastrophe, fewer than half say they will make 1 change in their life to avert it. So like, what? They believe scientists when the scientists say that all we have to do to leave a ruined world to our children is to keep doing what we're doing now. And they believe scientists when they tell us that we're allowing extractive industry to end the geological era that has nourished all life on Earth, and half of us who care won't do anything. So, like, I must be missing something. And I think the missing piece of the puzzle is the moral piece. Because once we understand that climate action is not just a matter of parts per million, but it's fundamentally a matter of morality, then I think we can make our moment. The point that I want to make is that facts have moral consequences. They cry out to us. They cry out to our moral center. They cry out to our character. They cry out to our bedrock fundamental beliefs about what is right and what is monstrous. We have to confound this greenwashing machine that is breaking us as moral beings, and we have to say, it's not just dangerous, it's wrong to wreck the world. But you might say, wait a minute, is she allowed to say that? I mean, could you just stand up there and say that? No, I can't. I can't, because if I want to make a claim that strong, I have to give reasons. I have to be willing to say why it's wrong to wreck the world. Okay, so back in 2010, my colleague Michael Nelson and I asked 100 of the world's moral leaders, Thich Nhat Hanh, Desmond Tutu, Wangari Maathai, Robin Kimmerer, to tell us, in 1,000 words or less, why we have a moral obligation to protect a planet in peril. The answers poured in, beautiful, powerful and poignant. And from all those answers that poured in, I have chosen 4 tonight that spoke particularly to me. So I'm going to give you 4 reasons. I got 4 minutes. Okay. Number 1, because we have a moral obligation to keep our promises to the children. When our children were born, we held them close and we whispered into their wispy hair. We said, I will keep you safe. I will give you the world. We didn't mean, I'll give you whatever's left tattered and torn on the table out of this great going out of business sale that we call an economy. I meant, we will give you this beautiful, life-graced, life-sustaining, bird-graced world. But already, on our watch, in our lifetimes, we've taken from the children half of all the mammals on the earth, 1/3 of all the songbirds, 1/3 of their forests, and in our homeland, in the Pacific Northwest, we've transmogrified 90% of the ancient forests into mega homes and toilet paper and money. And how are we going to keep the children safe from extractive destruction when even the skies are crying out in the languages of storm and fire? If by 2050, 1/8 of the world population will be forced from their homes by floods and drought and starvation, 1/4 of them will be children. These children, who miraculously came to us from the sea of the stars, do not deserve the hurt that is coming to their little bodies. So here comes the first moral affirmation. We can't break our promises to the children, even if that breaks our heart. 1 minute. So the second reason, we have a duty to act that's based on justice. The call for climate justice is the most exciting change I've seen in climate action in my whole life. The reason is that it empowers the morality-based call for action. Look what climate justice is telling us. The business plan of the fossil fuel industry, with the complicity of governments, is creating the greatest violation of human rights the world has ever seen. The right to life, the right to liberty, the right to a homeland, the right to security of persons. They're all violated by this unrestrained corporate power to extract obscene profits and offload the costs onto the future of the world, even though those rights are guaranteed us by the greatest consensus this world has ever seen, the greatest moral consensus, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The people who are being hit hardest and fastest, climate justice activists tell us, did not cause the problem, and that's not fair. Black and brown children in redline cities, farmers in the global south, indigenous people in mountains, jungles, tundra plains, and American cities, and future generations who have no voice to speak in their own defense. So here comes my second moral affirmation. This is cruel, this is racist, and this is wrong. Number 3, we have a duty to act because the world is wonderful. I don't have to tell you what a beautiful gift the world is. You know it with the fresh air in your lungs. You know it with the chickadee chortle in your heart and that funky, sweet smell of spring. The wanton destruction of what is beautiful is vandalism. I would go so far as to call it sacrilege, and I would claim we have a duty to protect it. Number 4. Now, the fourth and final reason. So far, we've been talking about moral reasons to take action that are based on the hope of achieving some outcome. Protecting children, achieving justice, defending the world we love. But what if we can't achieve this? It's not inconceivable that we are fighting a lost cause. What moral reason do we have to take action then? Wendell Berry says, we don't have a right to ask whether we will succeed or not. The only question we have a right to ask is, what is the right thing to do? So this is not a matter now of duty, but of character. People of moral integrity do what they believe is right because they believe it's right, regardless of what they can achieve. We protect children because that's the duty of all adults. We clamor for justice because we believe that all flourishing is mutual. We act lovingly toward the earth because we love it. We care for the earth because we are not the kind of people who wreck a place before we leave it. So defending this lovely, reeling world is our work. It's our moral obligation. It's our sacred responsibility. So the next question is, exactly how are we going to do that? I yield the floor to my colleague, Chris.
Oh, no pressure. Okay. Well, I feel like I have a bone to pick with Annette. She said dream team, but she didn't say one of us had a movie made after us. So no pressure here. Well, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about natural disasters, how they affect communities, and the steps we can take to make our community more resilient. You know, we've all got a timer here, so let me make sure my timer's on. We've got 7 minutes. So I started with the Corporation for National Community Service in October of 2005, which was about 2 months after Hurricane Katrina. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But during my 5 years there, I spent many months at a time on the ground, boots on the ground at different disasters. And my role was a federal disaster coordinator, which is a fancy way of saying that I went into communities, I saw what they needed, and we made it happen. We made this happen with AmeriCorps members and local volunteers. Now, today I work at the Benton Community Foundation, and in that role, the organization, BCF, had a big response to COVID. I was proud to be part of a team that delivered $445,000 in charitable gifts in under 8 months to nonprofits and individuals in this community after we found out what we were facing. So it's great to be, and many of you helped us with that, so thank you for your help. And in this experience, there's one irrefutable truth that I've learned, and it's shared with us by the Shriver Center on Poverty Law, who tells us that natural disasters do not discriminate, but their long-term impact disproportionately falls on low-income communities of color. The scale and quality of recovery efforts must meet the need, regardless of class, race, immigration status, or the people who are affected by disaster. So when we talk about preventing and responding to disasters, we have to make sure we have our eye fixed on our entire community. And so I want to ask you, as community members, who's in this room tonight? So I need some hands. I need a few minutes, and while this might cut into my 7 minutes, I'm dedicated to hearing about you. So has anyone here ever served in an AmeriCorps program or maybe volunteers in service to America? Keep your hands up. Look around the room. Has anyone in this room ever responded to a natural disaster, whether you're military, the American Red Cross, a faith disaster relief group? Okay, some more hands. If you didn't raise your hand, would you answer change if we considered COVID a natural disaster? If you haven't already raised your hand, because I see there's a lot of hands still down, I'm going to list some groups who were part of our local COVID response: our county disaster coordinators, healthcare providers, teachers, community-based nonprofits, faith group leaders, elected officials, parents, neighborhoods, kids, grandparents. Yeah, look around the room. These are the people that responded to our most recent local disaster, and they're the people who are going to respond to our next one. Now, I don't like this term, but I'd argue that essential workers, the people who check us out at Fred Meyer or Rite Aid and provide childcare and harvest our food, they're not here tonight, and they're part of our community. And what about community members whose English isn't their first language? I think about their needs all the time when I think about the year and a half I spent at home with my kids trying to figure out how to work the iPad, right? I'm 45, I should know how to work an iPad. Or what about people working and living in nursing homes or care facilities, or the impoverished who can't afford to leave? Think about how we're going to help them. And I'll turn you to this slide. So this is Hurricane Rita. This is Houston's response to Hurricane Rita. You haven't probably heard of Hurricane Rita because it's over 16 years ago that this happened. It was a month after Hurricane Katrina. It glanced Houston. Let me explain what NPR's reporter John Mackenzie described in this scene in late 2005. In searing 100-degree heat, cars crept up North I-45, windows down, air conditioning off to save precious gasoline. The traffic jam stretched for over 100 miles and has been going for over a day and a half. Gasoline was not to be found along the interstate, and cars that ran dry made the gridlock even worse. Abandoned vehicles littered the shoulder lanes. So in September of 2005, as Hurricane Rita approached Houston, leaders decided to empty the city in what became the largest evacuation in U.S. history, with an estimated 3.7 million people. More people lost their lives in the evacuation than in the actual hurricane. More than 10 times more people. Hurricane Katrina made landfall the month before, Category 3 hurricane. To this date, it's still the 5th largest hurricane in our nation's history, costing over $170 billion in damages and claiming more than 1,800 lives. Now, these are pictures from Mississippi. So the 4 pictures in the bottom, the 5 pictures in the bottom on the right, that's Mississippi. The storm happened in August. Those pictures were taken by me in February of the following year. Looks like no one even came through. This picture down here in the middle where you see the streets lined, that's how I got to the mayor's office every day. Top left, New Orleans, that's where the story was, right? But in Mississippi, a storm surge over 28 feet tall decimated the city of Pearlington. And people in a gymnasium, you could still see the water line 2 years later when I visited the gym, 28 feet above the floor, swam for 45 minutes until the water dropped. The ship down there, you see, was 4 miles off the coast, and Larry is 6 feet tall, the guy in the green shirt. So that's what happens. And our job, when we got there, was to help baseball fields be open for kids to play, because kids needed something to do. So this is St. Bernard's Parish, mucking and gutting. This is some of the hardest work you'll ever do in your life. But this is the resilience of a community. This is the site of the largest oil spill in our nation's history, where over 11,000 homes were inundated with 14 million gallons of oil. And in New Orleans, that oil spill happened. I'm getting to good news. In New Orleans, that oil spill and the decimation of New Orleans happened not because of Hurricane Katrina, because of the levees breaking and the infrastructure after the fact, right? So the storm passes over the city, the infrastructure fails, and Bob's your uncle. 12 years later, they still have parts of the Ninth Ward that were left to be rebuilt. But this is why we do the work. This is hope. You want to talk about resilience, you're in the right space. These kids, all affected by Hurricane Katrina, and 4 years later, they entered this program, Summer of Service. These young kids who were just full of life and happiness, wanted to make their communities better, reinvesting in their communities. These kids are my inspiration when I think about the resilience that we have to determine our future as a community. And you're in the right place because we've heard tonight, the Sustainability Coalition is where it's at, right? So economic vitality, community inclusion, health and human services, housing. Heck, by being here tonight, you're creating community resilience. And I'd like to give a round of applause to all the leaders that have made tonight happen from the coalition. Please give them a round of applause. So what are we going to do? We're going to vocalize our support for local, regional, and statewide disaster prevention efforts. So I said earlier, infrastructure. Congratulations to the Corvallis School District for their amazing build-out, but we need to invest in our infrastructure. Quick point of fact, when my wife and I moved here from Redmond, we paid more in taxes for a house worth a third less than our home in Corvallis. So I think we have room to make some changes to our infrastructure. Buy local and support green energy investments. Be a trendsetter when making personal capital expenditures. Educate yourself and be civically engaged, and give back by volunteering your talent, time, and wealth. So there's great organizations around the table tonight. We have a thriving and beautiful community. This is our future. They are our hope. And let's keep our eye on the ball about how we're going to improve Benton County for future generations. Thank you.
Well, good evening. All right, so this is where we're at. No single person or single action brought us to here. No bad actor purposefully created this. We collectively did this together, albeit with differences in investment. My takeaway is, if we take the same energy and collective beliefs that created this mess and harness the human energy to what we can change, we can shift together to a better method for creating and using energy. A big push right now can make all the difference in the world for the next generations. So I consider myself lucky to be sharing the stage tonight with some of my climate heroes and sheroes. The first time I had the pleasure to hear Kathleen Dean Moore speak was at a climate forum about 10 years ago that included every climate-concerned organization in town. And her words grabbed my attention with her very first line. She said, "Corvallis is a super-saturated solution." Do you remember this? And she stretched her arms out, pointing out to the density of people in the meeting hall, all working to course correct our fossil fuel addiction. In chemistry, a supersaturated solution is so very highly concentrated that if you add one tiny seed crystal, the entire solution crystallizes. And that's us. So talk about tipping points. The ultimate and most important tipping point is us and our human behavior. What decisions we will make going forward that will make crystal clear our vision for a future that we can love rather than fear. So one thing is very clear. No one person can do this alone. Greta's commitments can lead us forward, but she cannot heal the planet on our own. In order to take advantage of our collective power, we must all take a serious internal look, lock elbows, and move forward together. Now, many of you have already responded with a variety of actions on your own, so please humor me. I'm a PE teacher. I want to get your large motor muscles working. So if you would, when you hear a statement that's true for you, would you stand up for a count of 2 and then be seated again? So no clapping, just take a look around when you're standing up at all the different Gretas in the room. So if this is true for you, and by the way, this is a short little list because I have only 7 minutes. So anyway, so if you put on a sweater and turn down the heat, would you please acknowledge that? Nice. And then have a seat. Do you feel those glutes and quads working already? All right. If you've replaced your gas stove with an induction stove, would you please stand up? Good for you. I'm next. Way to go. If you choose to bike, walk, or ride the bus for the majority of your local travel, please stand up. Thank you for that effort. Yeah. If you've reduced food waste in your home or you compost food waste, please stand up. Ooh, yeah. And that's a big mover, by the way. Well done. If you've changed your heat source from gas to electric heat pump, please stand up. Fantastic. That's a cool one that we all need to do. All right. If you've added extra or more or new insulation to your home, please stand up. Fantastic. Thank you so much for making those efforts. So, I want to recognize how it feels to know that you're doing what you can. It feels pretty good. And it also feels pretty tough when you know that we need to do a lot better. I heard a speaker once refer to sustainability as like climbing Mount Everest. Ooh. There we go. It's a big task, yet it's surmountable. By taking just one step, your first step, and then another, and it's always just that. Just take the next step. I don't know who here is young enough to remember JFK throwing down the gauntlet. He said, "We will be the first country to land a man on the moon." And within a decade, we did it. It took unrelenting commitments to science, technology, resources to crank out the capacity to achieve this task. And we are in a similar course in our history now. Another one of my heroes, Bill Ripple, has been working with my students for a lot of years, has been calling it out for over a decade. It's time to place all hands on deck. All capable beings, it is time now to respond to climate chaos. This is our Earth shot, not a moon shot. We have just a decade to create a monumental movement that will shift the trajectory of pending climate chaos. The Inflation Reduction Act is the first meaningful, comprehensive attempt by our government systems to provide equitable and financially accessible means to shift together to a more carbon-neutral future. We have these funds through 2033, yet I believe that we have about 18 months until possibly our present leadership shifts to prove to Congress that we can utilize this funding and make our communities stronger. Historically, when Americans are delivered a challenge, we step up. So, are you ready to get your shift together? So this slide reveals on the Rewiring America's website a list of the rebates and tax incentives that are included in the Inflation Reduction Act. Now, I have to qualify this. We're still trying to figure out how they're going to implement this, and many of these fantastic incentives are not available yet, and it is yet to be seen how they will allocate them. But still, it makes me just a little bit giddy to think that you could get $4,000 to replace your electrical panel, often a barrier to energy improvements in older homes. And you might be able to get $8,000 to replace your gas furnace with an electric heat pump. Imagine no gas bill ever again as their prices rise. Or $800 towards an electric induction stove. This is kind of like one of those Oprah episodes, like, you get a stove and you get a stove, right? Well, this plan is designed to eliminate about $1,400 in every household's energy bill across the U.S. That's about 21,000 pounds of CO2 per year per household in the U.S. And what do we want from you? So we want you to commit to an action that gives you knowledge and access to these incredible benefits, and we want you to use them. If you find it overwhelming and your head might explode, we want you to contact the Shift Together website and sign up for one of the one-to-one guides that you could get to have someone kind of hold your hand through the process. Or if you just want to know more, go to the Shift Together resources page, and if you're ready, you might even volunteer to push this campaign out of the choir loft, that's us, and into the front yard, right? Like, the Shift Together isn't just this we group here. It's the we of everyone in the city of Corvallis and across the globe. So, nobody gets left behind. One other thing that goes with the Inflation Reduction Act plan is that it is targeting communities that have the worst effects of climate change and that are underrepresented. And so nobody gets left behind. I love this slide. When we work together with everyone's basic needs first and foremost in our hearts, we thrive. This is why I'm here. This is what drives Seats for the Soul. This is what drives the Corvallis Sustainability Coalition. It's what will drive this Shift Together campaign and make it so important. This is what makes our world a better place for everyone. So, are you ready to get your shift together? Please, 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 I'm glad to hear that. Be part of this super saturated solution of Corvallis. Thank you. Go Annette.
Thank you so much to our Climate Action Dream Team speakers. Thanks to all of you. So, as Julie explained, the Shift Together campaign that's being launched here right now is an opportunity for everyone in our community to accelerate action on climate change. During the next 5 years, we plan to roll out a wide variety of ways for our community to accelerate our efforts to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And we'd like to start by letting more people know about opportunities that already exist, even before we get the benefits of the Inflation Reduction Act. There are things we could all be taking advantage of right now to save money by saving energy. So, there are 3 ways to engage in this campaign that we invite you to consider tonight. And I'm going to take a few minutes to explain those options to you. And in a moment, we will be asking our discussion leaders to hand out response cards, but not yet. I want to go over the action options in more detail first. The first checkbox on the response card is explore my energy-saving options on my own. The Sustainability Coalition's Energy Action Team has been compiling a list of all the resources that are available to us right now, whether you're a renter, a homeowner, or a landlord, or whether you're affiliated with a school, a business, a nonprofit, or a faith community. There are opportunities such as rebates, incentives, and funding support to help you right now. This applies to both energy efficiency measures and renewable energy opportunities such as solar. So if you check this box on the response form, one of our team members will contact you to point you toward these resources. The second option to engage is take action by signing up for an energy assessment. Energy assessments are designed to help you better understand how your home or workplace is currently using energy and to provide guidance on what kinds of energy improvements you can make that will also save you money. So if you check that box, one of our team members will contact you to explain the various energy assessments that are available to you, because there are different levels, and to support you on your path to greater energy efficiency and use of renewable energy. Shift together means we really are going to be working together and supporting each other on this. Now, on the back of the response card is a chart to let you know if you would qualify for even more funding help because you're at or below a certain income level. Both the Oregon Department of Energy and the Energy Trust of Oregon offer additional financial support for lower income Oregonians. And we just found out that these numbers have changed recently for the good. So stay tuned, we're gonna correct these. And the third box says, help spread the word and or be a campaign volunteer. We want everyone in our community to learn about the Shift Together campaign, and we need your help. We've put together a marketing toolkit that will make it easy for individuals and organizations to help us spread the word about Shift Together, whether through social media, listservs, newsletters, or whatever means work for you. We already have several organizations that have agreed to help us get the word out, including those listed here. We are very grateful to these organizations for agreeing to help us get the word out about how we can shift together. So if you want to help let others know about what they can do, how they can save energy and money, please choose this third option. This third option also provides an opportunity for you to be a campaign volunteer. As a volunteer, you might help by doing something as simple as putting up posters, or writing a letter to the editor, or talking to people about their experiences. Or you might want to get really involved and go through training on how to do a home energy assessment, or volunteer to help organize what we call peer learning groups. These are small groups of people who get together to share what they've learned, whether they're homeowners who have replaced their gas appliances with electric appliances, renters who have just signed up for community solar, or businesses that have taken advantage of rebates and incentives. If you're interested in helping our whole community accelerate action on climate change through the Shift Together campaign, please choose this option. And of course, you can choose more than one if you want. So now, discussion leaders, please pass out the Shift Together response cards that are in your packet, and let's take a few minutes to fill them out.